I'm sorry, but I don't want to be an emperor. That's not my business. In this world, there's room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful, but we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate. We think too much and feel too little. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness. Without these qualities, life will be violent. And all will be lost. All will be lost. Do not despair. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die. Dictators die. And the power they took from the people will return to the people. Will return to the people. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world to do away with greed. Now let us fight to free the world, to fulfill that promise. Let us all unite.
All right, folks, welcome to the Corporation Nation radio program. I am Clint Richardson, your host. Joining me today for a special edition on this December 9th, 2013 is my usual Thursday guest, Mr. Freeman Burt. Welcome to the show, Burt. Thanks for joining me.
Well, thanks for having me there, bud. Hope to be able to add to the enlightening subject that you're about to bring about.
Well, I'm sure you will. I don't think you'll have any problem interjecting here today. What I wanted to do today was to cover something. You know, I first of all, let me just say thank you. And if the gentleman who did this is listening, you know who I'm talking about. About 4 or 5 weeks ago, I just happened to mention on air that I'd found this new dictionary, and I thought it was wonderful because it actually, for the most part, it quotes scripture as most of its examples. And this is the Webster's 1828 Dictionary of the English Language. It's a fantastic dictionary, and it has opened my eyes in ways that some of the other dictionaries have not. And so I wanted to thank, what I did is I said, hey, if anybody out there wants to get me I don't know if I said a Christmas gift or what, want to make me a very happy guy, I don't ask for much, just get me a 1828 Webster's Dictionary. Next thing I know, someone's asking for my address so they can send it to me. And now I've got this big green monstrosity in front of me that has just some of the most fantastic. It's not a legal dictionary per se, but it's a sort of a combination of both, and it's fantastic. One of the words that I find that I sometimes find a legal dictionary, and this is probably crazy to most folks, but I sometimes find the dictionary more enjoyable than a fiction book, because if you find one word, just one word, it can lead you down a chase, down a path where you have to then look up 20 or 30. It's like a treasure hunt, 20, 30 different words just to get the concept of what is being said in the one definition. Because, of course, every word in the legal language must be defined. And that's why we continuously repeat that every word that you agree to in any contract must be defined. It is not a conversational word. It is not there because it loves you or because it wants to help you. It's there to bind you. Okay, all words in the dictionary, in the legal language, are there as some form of legal bondage, and you must understand that. So I'm looking through, and I find this word just haphazardly, and the word is denizen. Now, it's kind of like citizen, except you're changing the CIT to DEN. So I'm looking at this thing going, denizen. And as I'm reading the definition, I figure out, and I start writing a blog entry. And the blog entry, which I haven't posted yet, is called How Slaves Were Enfranchised into the Federal Corporation. That's going to be the name of the article. how slaves were enfranchised into the federal corporation. Now, Burt and I have talked about this in length, about the 14th Amendment citizen that was basically put into place to control the slaves. And it's interesting because very much like the people, they had to let the slaves go. In other words, they had to free all the slaves into a certain form or status. And once that took place, then they could control them. Then they could add to them, they could give them privileges and protect them, as we've talked about before. So let me read you this definition for denizen. And we're going to base the show around this because I believe that that's what we all are. We call ourselves citizen, and the codes even refer to us as citizens. But technically, when we actually look, we find that this is a much, much better description for what we are. So let me just read this to you here. Denizen, the noun. In England, an alien who is made a subject by the king's letters patent. Okay? Holding a middle state. Tell me if this sounds familiar. Holding a middle state between an alien and a natural-born subject. He may take land by purchase or device, and basically what that means is that he may purchase the title, not the actual land himself. And this is something which it says which an alien cannot. So an alien cannot come on and purchase the title of land without becoming a citizen. But he cannot take by inheritance. And this is very apropos to what we call citizen, because we cannot inherit land. We can only inherit the title, and that is even iffy if no one challenges it. And then, of course, there's the 50% death tax or other types of taxes, estate tax. All right? So it's an in-between state to be a denizen. A stranger admitted to residence, we've talked about residence before, and certain rights in a foreign country. The final definition is very simple. A citizen. Now the verb, transient verb, to make a denizen, this is very interesting, to admit to residence with certain rights and privileges or to enfranchise. Oh, boy. Let me tell you something, folks. I'm going to read you the definition of enfranchise from the 1828 dictionary here. From franchise to okay, we always think that we set the slaves free. Here's what it says. To enfranchise means to set free or to liberate from slavery. But it doesn't just stop there. It says to make free of a city, corporation, or state to admit to the privileges of a freeman. Okay, a freeman is one word, F-R-E-E-M-A-N. It then goes on to say that the English colonies were enfranchised by special charters. Oh, well, okay. A franchise, we've talked about the word colony meaning plantation, but this actually says the colonies were enfranchised by special charters, and those were actually constitutions. There's thousands of constitutions out there. We seem to refer to the one and only Constitution, but that's just the latest. To free or release from custody, to naturalize, or to denizen. So to enfranchise is to denizen. To receive as denizens, as to enfranchise foreign words. To enfranchise, to make free, to incorporate a man. To incorporate a man in a society or body politic. Folks, we are corporations. We are in the corporation nation. We'll be back.
Living in the street. Oh, there's a solution.
day to the Corporation Nation radio program. The word of the day, folks, is denizen. Denizen. It turns out, in my humble opinion, that the word citizen is just a, well, I guess you could call it a precursor or almost a descriptive word to describe a denizen. Citizen, denizen. Again, to admit to residence with certain rights and privileges or to enfranchise, and you are limited to what you can do. You're sort of in a state of limbo. Now, Bert, doesn't that sound very much like a United States citizen as a foreign or as a resident in a foreign country?
It sure does, and I mean it makes actually perfect sense with the way that they operate, because you're actually an alien relatively to the District of Columbia, but you at the same time can be a subject of that federal government. So it's in pretty well.
It's bizarre. To make free of a city, to enfranchise, to make the corporation or state, to admit to the privileges of a free man, to naturalize, to denizen, to receive as denizens. I'm sure that this has a lot to do with the military rule that we so enjoy. What is a freeman? And this is interesting, Bert, because I've got on you before about calling yourself a freeman. I have lectured you, and now I'm going to do it again. One who is in the enjoyment of the right to do whatever he pleases, not forbidden by law. If the law says that you must stay in a 10 by 10 room all of your life and be fed through bars, well, that's the enjoyment of the rights that a free man will have. One in possession of the civil rights enjoyed, another legal term, by the people generally. One who enjoys liberty. Of course, there's 5 or 6 different types of liberty, and we're not talking about the good kind. One who is not subject to the will of another, unless one who enjoys or is entitled to a franchise or a peculiar privilege. Okay, so what did we see up here now? To enfranchise is to admit to the privileges of a freeman, to naturalize, or to denizen. This is actually incredible to think that this whole time we've just been calling ourselves a citizen when, in fact, underneath it all, we are... it's actually kind of hard, Bert, to describe what it means to call someone a denizen. It's like calling them... riffraff, almost. It's like this. It's almost like a naturalized alien. It's like some limbo state where you're not naturally born because government doesn't recognize natural anything, and you're not an alien. You're someone with a privilege.
Yeah, and I mean when you begin to see the way that the political system works, and we're still unraveling a lot of things about how this political system works, because if you look at all the constitutions of every state, that they like to use the word people in their preambles and in the very beginning of their supposedly bills of rights. So the question is, who are those people? Because those people cannot really exist, because everybody else is being treated as, like you say, a subject, or they're being treated like an alien of that particular state. So who are these people that they're talking about? So the average man or woman walking down the street is acting like a subject, and he's alien to his own state, which makes him this term that you're talking about.
It's bizarre. I mean, it's like almost like opening your eyes for the first time. There's a lot of other words here, of course, that, as I said, it's like a connect the dots when you start when you find the right word, it's like a little journey, and it's quite incredible. Well, let's see. I lost my page here. Here's another thing that I found. Now, I've said this many times. We just read the definition of a free man, one word, but it's also that applies to the same thing as freedom. Freedom being one word. Dom, D-O-M, is actually a very important word in and of itself. You have the definition for free, which is being at liberty or not being under necessary restraint, physical or moral. Basically free to do what you want as long as you're not breaking the natural law, doing any harm to others. But when you add the word dom to anything, wisdom, anything, kingdom, let me read you what it actually says here. The word dom, or D-O-M, is used as a termination. It denotes jurisdiction or property and jurisdiction. So if you claim to have freedom, what does that mean? Primarily doom, judgment, as in kingdom or earldom. Hence, it is used to denote a state, condition, or quality, as in wisdom or freedom. So now when we move down, again, and we read the definition of freedom, liberty, the right to do what is not forbidden by law. Freedom does not preclude the idea of subjugation or subjection to law. In fact, it presupposes the existence of some legislative provision by securing the like observance from others. In other words, forcing people to obey the law. And we go back to the 1828 dictionary here with Webster's. Freedom is a state of exemption from the power or control of another, or liberty, exemption from slavery, servitude, or confinement. Now, when we look at that definition, that kind of puts it in a new perspective. Freedom literally means that you are a slave, that you are carrying around that moniker, and as we discussed on Friday, if you're convicted of a crime, then guess what? You're a prison laborer, a slave, in other words. So you're walking around with freedom, which is like having a license to not be a slave. It's exactly what it says. It's an exemption. It's it doesn't mean you're not enslaved. It means that while you're walking around, I guess the best way to put it is, while you're walking around, you're exempt from martial law or military rule. You're allowed to roam freely.
Well, let's look at it like this. When they're talking about freedom, what they're saying is that in your normal state, you're actually a slave.
Yes.
And when you're not in your normal state, you are licensed to be free.
You've got like a hall pass that gives you the freedom. Free to do what you want as long as the law says it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
The second you break that law, you go back to being
a slave, which is your normal state.
Your normal state. That's the interesting part about this. It also goes on to say particular privileges, franchise, immunity. Franchise. Freedom is a franchise, folks. Immunity as the freedom of a city, power of enjoying franchises, any exemption from constraint or control, and a license. Those are the definitions of freedom. This is crazy. We'll be back, folks. Stay with us.
Scientists have been battling to understand what this unappealing object is all about. What the object is all about.
Information in the form of energy streams in simultaneously through all of our sensory systems in the form of energy. All our sensory systems. And then it explodes into this enormous collage of what this present moment looks like, what it feels like, and what it sounds like. Explodes into this enormous
mushrooms, like a walnut.
It is the most mysterious part of the human body, and yet it dominates the way we live our adult lives. It is the brain.
All right, folks, welcome back. You're in the Corporation Nation with Clint Richardson and my special guest today, Burt, Freeman Burt. I'm gonna get on you again about that Freeman thing.
Okay, well, I'm gonna change my name from Dennison to Venison. How about that? Venison Burt.
Dennison Burt. Yep. Dennison Clint and Dennison Burt. Well, we're all apparently, as we discussed, we're all apparently not citizens per se, but denizens. I just find this to be so fascinating. We are franchised. All these definitions basically go back and use each other to describe each other. So to enfranchise, again, is to naturalize, or to denizen, to admit to the privileges of a free man. Free man being one word. This I want to scream this from the mountaintop because it's such a revelation that really, Burt, I mean, if we were to say that this points to the fact that we are actually in a feudal system, would you say?
Well, I mean, the best way, we were talking earlier that people need to realize is that we live in a farm, and we are the ones being farmed. We're not the owners of the farm. We're the product that goes out of the farm. And the best way to really visualize this is to call yourself or to see yourself as a cow. They're either going to milk you or they're going to slaughter you, but they're going to get their product out of you one way or another, because outside of you providing some kind of a benefit to go upwardly, you're basically useless. And some of the cows that try to act like they're smarter than the others need to be made examples so that the other cows won't get any ideas. And when they try to break through the fence and they've managed to get across the fence, they find out that, hey, I just walked into another farm where they're going to give me their citizenship and call me a citizen of their state, belonging to their state. So I just left, one frying pan, and I either jump into the fire or I jump into another frying pan. And that's really how the system is designed worldwide.
And I guess you could take that a step further, and you could say each one is either in reality or virtually a port of entry. Mm-hmm. You enter, and what do you need? You need a passport, right? You enter into a different form or a different flag. Of course, the flag represents admiralty, maritime law. It's the only reason we have flags was to fly them on the ships, of course, to tell other ships who we were and that we were acting in commerce fairly and weren't looking for a fight necessarily. To obey the international laws of nations, basically. And that's really what we're talking about when we say farms. We're literally talking about different feudal systems.
And what I'm finding out, because right now I'm doing actually a breakdown for some people that I'm helping in court, and I'm taking a breakdown, and this is actually in California. I'm going through all the different codes that they have there. California is huge. Their code is comparable to the federal government code. That's how big it is. But although it is big, it is very thorough and it's very detailed. So I'm actually starting to like it. And I'm going through and trying to show all the different connections. And what I'm seeing is that if you get a sense of who you are supposed to be, you can actually use their codes and everything to set yourself free, because nothing in their code applies to you, but you have to have some basic understanding And I mean, that's some of the things that I'm trying to do on my website and on those meetings that I'm doing. And Gary will probably get on here and talk a little bit about his experience and the confidence that you can gain by knowing where you are. If you at least know that you're in a farm, then at least you know that maybe you should put rubber boots on and take your fancy heels off, Clint.
waddle through the crap a bit.
Yeah, you don't want to go in your high heels into a farm. So if you know that that's where you are, then you will at least prepare yourself accordingly. And the same thing going to these courts. I mean, when you understand the reality of how this thing actually works, reading through the code, it makes so much more sense. And that's why someone like Clint can read through all these terms and become fascinated by it, because he's able to connect it with the truth. And truth is stranger than fiction. It's more fun.
Well, I don't know if it's fun. Fun might not be the right word.
Oh, it has to be fun for you to spend as much time as you do researching.
I guess. Yeah, it's like a drug almost, I guess. Right? Well, yeah. I mean, this really bothers me though, because again, we're talking about status and how important it is to establish the status. Well, what do you think I am? When you're talking to me like this and treating me like a subject or treating me like something, what is it that you think that I am? And I think that concept has been, at this point, so lost that the assumption is just so normal when a police officer, for instance, approaches you, and he believes that he has jurisdiction. I guarantee that if you ask any cop out there, he doesn't know the definition of jurisdiction. He doesn't know the definition of consent. He doesn't know these definitions because that's not what they're taught. So the status of, well, I mean, what can we say? Slave with a license to walk around freely, as the general. As the general status that needs to be pushed around every once in a while and reminded who's boss, that's kind of how I think these police officers must feel to try to be empathetic. I try to imagine how they feel walking around and everybody's looking at them like an authority figure. And, it kind of reminds me of the way cows look at me when I walk into the farmyard. They look at me as with a flight or fight response, and they're sitting there and they're looking at me. If I get too close, they run. Hopefully, they don't run at me. And that's exactly what a cop must feel like. I mean, this is crazy. The default status is a slave with a license to roam. That's bizarre to think about.
Yeah, but in fact, that's the truth. And here's something crazy that I'm learning from this endless research that we do, is when you go to court, there is no such thing as being coerced. And this is going to sound crazy, but you are not coerced in court so long as they give you the chance to appeal.
Oh.
And that's how they see it. And that's court case decisions. So you cannot claim that you're being coerced because they say, well, we'll coerce you, we'll force you to go through trial, we'll force you to do all these things, but it's not really coercion because you can always appeal. So this is how these people operate. This is how these people think. So when you really begin to understand how these people operate, it just opens up your eyes to where you can see past their nonsense or be able to look through the forest and see the light on the other side.
Well, it seems to me that they're operating no different than, like I said, a farmer herding cow or cattle. And that makes a lot more sense when we talk about it in this form. All right, folks, we'll be back, and we'll take a call from Gary, who's had some interesting stuff in court.
The mission
mission was successfully completed. Reality.
Is this real? Or is this just a ride? The world is like a ride. You think it's real? It's just a ride. We can change it any turn we want. It's only a choice between fear and love. The world is like a ride. You think it's real? It's just a ride. We can change it any turn we want. It's only
we're in the Corporation Nation radio program. With me today is Freeman Burt, and we have a caller. Burt has I guess we'll call him a client that's been going to court and always challenging the normal functions of the court. Gary, welcome to the show.
Hey, Clint, Burt, how you guys doing?
Very good. What's going on with your case, sir?
I was just Skyping Burt and asking him what he thought I should focus on. And so the last time I went to court, which was a month ago, I entered in a motion for the court to tell me what my status is.
Political status.
Yeah, my political status. And the way the system works in a lot of states, North Carolina, it works. So they bring you into court, and the first thing they want you to do is to tell them whether you want a state-appointed attorney, or you want to hire your own attorney, or whether you want to defend yourself. And it's all a trick question. So I refused to give them that information, and they essentially assigned me an attorney. And so today I went to court to appear with the court with my attorney, and I met with my attorney today, and he went over my motions, and he took me off to the side there, and he goes, "You don't really expect me to stand up in front of the court and ask them what your status is as a citizen, do you?" I says, "Well, I think that'd be good information for me to know to see how the court is looking at me so I could determine how to defend myself." And he goes, well, you're also asking them to challenge the jurisdiction of the court. Are you a resident of North Carolina? I says, well, I'm not sure. He goes, well, do you live in North Carolina? I says, well, I don't. What do you mean by live? He goes, do you live in North Carolina? And I says, can you define live, please? He goes, now you're being hard to get along with. Do you eat and sleep in North Carolina every day? And I say, from time to time I do. But I consider my domicile to be in Washington, D.C. Anyway, so we go on, and Burt wanted me to comment on your level of confidence when dealing with these people. Is that I've now been in the game long enough to know what to expect from these people, and I can anticipate their reaction, but at the same time they can surprise you. So the attorney says, okay. I told him at this point, I says, what I'm really interested in now, I have motions I have presented to the court, and I would like to get them heard. And I do not want to waive my arraignment because based on North Carolina statutes, some motions have to be made before the arraignment. So therefore, I didn't want to have an arraignment before I was sure that all the motions that I needed to present before the arraignment was I had my ducks in the row there.
Mm-hmm.
And so he said, "Okay, well, I think I can get us a hearing to get your motions heard next hearing." Okay, and that was in the morning, about 10 o'clock. So I sat there till 4 in the afternoon, and he walks back into the courtroom, and they call me up, and he goes to the court, and he says, "Your Honor, I had a meeting with Mr. Allen morning. This is the first time we've met, and I've come to the conclusion that there's no way me and him are going to be able to agree on how I should defend him. So therefore, I wish to withdraw my name for his representation." And then she goes, "Okay, Mr. Allen, do you want to defend yourself, or do you want the court to appoint you another attorney? Yes or no?" "I just want a yes or no answer." I goes, "Wow, Your Honor, you know, I just met Mr. Blanton this morning, and his reaction here today and his presentation is kind of surprising to me because that wasn't anything in our conversation today earlier. So therefore, I would at least like the opportunity for me and Mr. Blanton to sit down and maybe have the opportunity to iron out our differences, and maybe we could come to some reasonable conclusion." And she goes, "Well, I think that's a good idea." She says, "Mr. Blanton, what do you think about that?" He goes, "Well, that was well worded, Your Honor." He says, "I'm going to continue this till the 14th of next month." See you then, Mr. Allen.
Yeah. So here's one thing that Gary already had decided as soon as they appointed him this attorney, is that he was going to milk this attorney for all his words. They want to give him an attorney? All right, we'll take your attorney, but we're going to make him work for us. We ain't gonna be working for you.
Well, then you're putting him into a conflict of interest because his main duty is to the bar.
Exactly. So that's what we're trying to do now. Is we're trying to make this guy actually work for Gary. What a concept! The attorney working for you. And see, the attorney doesn't want to work for him. The attorney does not want to bring an issue before the court that is gonna really take Gary out of the jurisdiction of the court, because that would be going against what he's actually supposed to be doing, which is maintaining the business of the court.
Yeah, and I think you have to be careful too when the court asks you if you want to defend yourself. Well, what do you mean? Do you mean pro se? Do you mean? Do you mean that I should be my own attorney? What do you mean? Because that enters into a whole different. That's a choice as well. That's by asking one question, she was offering you a choice. You could take you could take on the role of your own attorney, or you could literally stand as a man. You have to be careful with that too.
Yeah, and here's another way to look at the whole idea of going to court. Imagine yourself back in the Roman days when they had the big Colosseum and they would bring in lions or whatever, and there's the lions, and then they turn to you and say, "Well, Clint, do you want to defend yourself, or do you want this guy to stand in for you? But if he loses, the lions get to eat you. So what would you like to do?" And by the way, you have a 2-inch knife to protect yourself with from the 6 lions. I mean, this is really what happens in court. This is the choices that they give you. And you shouldn't even be in there because there's nothing for you to defend. You have no problems with those lions. You have no business in that Coliseum. You want to go about your business. But they coerced you in there, and they're telling you, "No, we want you to play. Here's your 2-inch knife, and then here's the show. Let's get started." How do you want to plead?
Well, it reminds me of the Delphi technique. When they go to a public meeting, for instance, and they say, well, their plans are, they've already changed the master plan. It's already set. All they need to do is put it out there for the consent of the people. So they don't say, well, what do you think, folks? Should we build this? Should we take someone's property to build a park or a school or whatever? They say, they use questions, loaded questions. We want to know your opinion. Should we use this land that we're going to eminent domain for this or for this? Mm-hmm. You see the difference? That one's asking permission, one is trying to lead you into very, very limited choices, and you have to be very careful. They know what they're doing, and they are using a version of that Delphi.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So the one thing that I wanted Gary to talk about is that they kind of things didn't go, and you can never prepare completely. Things didn't go like he was expecting it to go because the attorney told him he was going to get up there and present his motions, and all of a sudden he changed the plan. And Gary had to think quickly on his feet.
All right, well, we're going to be back. We got to go to break. Stay with us, Gary, and folks.
Soldiers, don't give yourselves to brutes. Men who despise you, enslave you, tell you what to do, what to think, and what to feel. Who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men. Machine men with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines. You are men. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful. Let us use that power to make this life a wonderful adventure. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world to do away with greed. A world where science and progress will lead to all men's happiness. Do not despair. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die. And the power they took from the people will return to the people. Let us all unite.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Corporation Nation. What a boondoggle. I'd like to welcome all the denizens out there to the show, including my guests. So, Gary, Burt, I should say. What would you like Gary to cover here?
Well, I wanted him to touch on his level of confidence that basically allowed him to think kind of fast on his feet. If you don't mind there, Gary. Oh, he says he got disconnected.
Oh. Disconnected.
Well, maybe he can call back.
Well, yeah, I'm sure he will. Well, what were you referring to there, Bert?
Oh, well, that he was not expecting this attorney to actually become what you would expect an attorney to become, which would be a turncoat, right? For him to turn himself around on him in the middle of the courtroom when he already said that he was going to bring up his motions, and because of the fact that Gary's feeling a lot more comfortable now with having a grip on all of this basic information, he was able to immediately turn it into saying, well, I think we need to actually have a discussion here. So no, I'm not ready to dismiss him. I still have him on the line. I still have him on the hook, and I don't want to let him go.
Well, so was he? Oh, looks like Gary's back too.
Mm-hmm.
Gary, was he actually trying to recuse himself from the case due to a conflict of interest, or was he just basically trying to? I mean, did he have a legitimate reason? For the record?
So I had submitted 12 motions, and I had gave him a list of the motions, and he said that he told the judge that he had looked at several of the motions and that he could not in good conscience defend 10 of the motions, that maybe he could argue 2 of them, but in his own consciousness, he could not try to support the other 10 because he didn't feel like it had a basis in law.
Yeah, I mean,
didn't
that's
have a basis in
incredible.
private law.
Well, I mean, so, you know, you don't get to discuss things like that. So, so I'm going to be able to have a meeting with him. So, that's going to be that's going to be an interesting conversation.
Well, yeah, you should film it.
Well, you should film it, record it, do the whole 9 yards.
Absolutely.
Well, if I can, I will. But you know how you have to do that stuff incognito usually, or it won't happen. So.
Well, and I'm hoping to be part of at least listening to it when he has that conversation with the guy. But basically, what we're going to try to do is pin this attorney against the court, and you know that's not an easy thing to try to do, but that's actually what Gary wants to do.
Yeah, and I, you know, it's you know, I'm not sure how we're going to succeed at it. I mean, I think to succeed at it is going to be something we're going to have to put a lot of thought into.
Yeah, well, one thing that I already know off the bat that we're going to do is you're going to have to present to the judge and say, Your Honor, yes, I need him now at this point. He can no longer be my attorney, but before I let him go, I would like you to look at the motions and see if you in fact agree with him that these are not motions that he can bring up to the court.
Okay, well, there is a point that I did miss to make that he did do in our favor, in that I pointed out to him, okay, so the reason the court appointed me my attorney was that I had filed 3 motions, and I asked the court to address those motions before I answered the question on whether I wanted an attorney or not, because I felt the information in those motions were relevant to whether I wanted to hire an attorney or whether I wanted to defend myself. And when she looked at the motion, she says, okay, Mr. Allen, I have read your motions today, and we're going to assign you an attorney. And so, and the main motion there was to address my status, and the other motion was to address whether I was in the general court of jurisdiction, and the other motion was who was my actual accuser here, which is in the Constitution, that we have a opportunity to cross-examine the accuser, but they don't never tell you who the accuser is. I mean, in this instance, it's someone who's related to me, but he is now listed as a witness.
Yeah, so there's no accuser.
Right. The state is bringing the action against me, using my relative as a witness against me. And so, to me, how can the state be the accuser when the actual accuser is my relative? But they're trying to say that he is now a witness. So the Constitution says that I have a chance to cross-examine the accuser. So I'm asking the state to identify who the actual accuser in this prosecution is, and they won't identify that either.
Well, and that's because you're in an administrative court. It's a mess.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure if I'm on board with Burt's evaluation on what an administrative court is and a superior court. They're calling these administrative hearings, so I'm not sure. It's an administrative hearing in superior court is the way that I'm understanding it, and the way that it keeps being referred to by the attorneys and by the judges. So I'm not sure if calling it an administrative court is the right terminology to use at this point.
Well, the question to ask is what are they administrating?
Well, they're administrating the process on how they're going to proceed against you in prosecuting you.
Well, they're administrating justice. Remember, we discussed that you're in a court of justice,
right?
And what's a court of justice? It's a court that administers statutory law.
Well, I'll totally agree with that. That we are definitely in a...
Yeah, so if they don't bring in anything into that court besides statutes...
Okay, so you just reminded me of another important point that I had got to mention, in that in my conversation with the attorney, this was offline, in the lobby, me and him were trying to, establish a relationship. He asked me, why are you challenging your status as a citizen? And I started to describe.
All right, yeah, we'll be right back, folks. Stay with us. Why are you challenging yourself as a citizen?
Hi, neighbor. Welcome again to this neighborhood. I'd like to show you something. You know what this is? Maybe if I press this button. There are so many things to learn about in this world, and so many people who can help us learn, Did you ever grow anything in the garden of your mind? You can grow ideas in the garden of your mind. It's good to be curious about many things. You can think about things and make believe. All you have to do is think. You can think about things and make believe. All you have to do is think, and they'll grow.
Oh, welcome back, folks. I'd like to remind you we do have a chat room. People have been challenging my identity in the chat room, so I just logged on to make sure that everybody knew I was me. Chat Tango, CHATANGO. That's corporationnation.chattango.com if you'd like to join the online party. All right. Well, I'll tell you what. We're going to move on to some other callers here, but let's wrap up. Let's wrap up what's happening.
Gary, you there?
Hey, yeah, I'm still here.
Okay.
So, I'm not sure how to fill in there. I mean, I think we made some good points.
What was the question? What was the question before the break?
Yeah, you said there was a point that wasn't completed. The attorney. So he kind of covered my butt a little bit in that. The court kind of got. I've been through 3 hearings now where they've tried to get me to sign this waiver of counsel form. And I've been able to delay them 3 times and been able to not sign the waiver of counsel form. And so the 3rd time they just assigned me counsel. And when he, told them that he wanted to resign as my counsel today, is that he made the point that the reason that I didn't want to sign the waiver of counsel was that I need to make. He pointed to the statute that related to you have to have certain motions filed before the arraignment for them to be considered legitimate. Oh, good.
And so he put all my motions on record, 12 motions that I made, on record for the court to hear them, which I wasn't able to do.
Sweet. So you are using him to your advantage.
Yes, so he that was a big advantage today.
Wow, cool. Well, good job there, Mr. Hombre.
Well, thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, my friend.
I enjoyed it.
It's great because, and this might seem like a tedious process to some people, but I mean, you're really throwing just by asking a few questions, you're really throwing a monkey wrench into the system and basically bringing it to a halt, because they just can't continue unless you play by the rules. It's just so funny. This is not justice.
And once you start getting a thrill out of being able to do that, that's where it becomes fun.
Well, I mean,
then you realize, okay, we got a game here, and I know, it's like learning to play chess a little bit, until you learn some of the basic moves and all. It's not fun, but
you just stand up there like you would imagine the character Christ did in the biblical times, with complete and utter confidence, because everybody out there knows that they are a living, breathing person with a soul, a natural person with a soul. And if you get up there and let them treat you just like a commodity, like an artificial thing, they're gonna. It's like a pack of wild dogs. They're gonna bite right on to your lack of confidence, to your lack of. I mean, this is so important to have.
That is so true.
Yeah,
is that you can't let them sniff that fear off of you, because they will try to use that against you.
Well, you literally have to look at them with contempt. Literally. I don't look at it that way. I look at it as more as them being, and if you're familiar with the MFC, the Ultimate Fighter, they're just an opponent of me that I'm trying to outwit, and it's a playing field. And they've got their rules, I've got mine, and, if we do the right jiu-jitsu, the winner comes out on top. Radio. All right, thanks, my friend. Take care.
All right, thanks.
Let's see here. I'm a little behind. We had, I think, Bill in Idaho. How you doing, Bill? Oh, we might have lost Bill. All right. Good times.
Okay, so anyway, let me just touch on something that Gary was saying, is that according to certain rules, okay, because going to court is almost like a tennis match. There are rules, right? You can't just get up there and say, "Okay, man, here, you throw the ball at me. No, here, I'll hit it over." No, there's procedures that need to be followed, and when you know certain procedures that have to happen. Like A must precede B.
Yeah.
If you know some of these basic things, you can actually control the courtroom. You can control the whole procedure. And learning these rules, of course, I mean, usually you have to go to law school to learn all of these things, but the information is there, it's available, and that's what we're trying to do is teach people that they have to pay attention to certain things if they are going to try to succeed in fighting this system.
Well, I mean, and I think that's, you just said the most important point. A has to come before B. That court cannot proceed unless you cooperate. Again, it's a voluntary society. It's hard to see sometimes. It's hard to understand that we live in a voluntary society, that unless we figure out the rules that these people play by, that we're going to be screwed. We're going to volunteer without even knowing it, and that's the ironic part.
Yeah, and as you go through this thing and you begin to learn some of the basic concepts, knowing the basic concept, when you go into court, you're like, wait a minute, this doesn't smell right. There must be a rule that deals with this. And you go to the court rules and you're like, hot damn, there it is. That was right. There is a rule that follows that. And then little by little, a lot of these rules become kind of innate in you, just by applying it to basic principles of law. Because although the courtroom seems like it's a filthy, dirty place to be in, it can be honorable if you know the rules.
yeah, I don't know about honor, but it could be made to follow its own rules if you can somehow swing it. Yeah, and truly, it's a game of words. If nothing else has become apparent in the, I don't know, this is like the 35th or 36th show we've done. If nothing else is apparent by now, the concept that words are everything in this game. Semantics mean everything. That should be the most important point. All right, folks, we'll be back. Take some calls if you like. Stay tuned.
Wake up, wake up, wake up and look around you. We're lost in space and the earth is your home.
Derivatives, quantitative easing, trade imbalances, recession, low GDP, nations close to collapsing, and subprime loans, foreclosed homes, and people's taxes spent to bail out too big to fail AAA banks again. Fear levels rising as a US crash seems imminent, having smashed the debt ceiling of 14 trillion. Despite protests and clashes in Athens streets, the IMF imposed structurally unjust programs in Greece, where in fact the term economy entered our language from the Greek oikonomia, meaning household management. Well, how are we managing? Theories abound, but in practice, does anyone actually know what the hell's even happening?
Nikita, cierra la puerta, por favor.
Auditing, our financial day of reckoning. It's an interesting quandary.
All right, folks, welcome back. Does anybody really know what the heck's going on? It's such a good question. And in fact, the answer is quite a humble yes. The things that seem so random out there, especially in the financial world, I can assure you are very, very organized. It's brilliant how they've made it seem otherwise. And of course, we're not really dealing with money. We're dealing with some other form of thing that is really quite hard to put into words. Scripts and promises to pay and all that sort of thing. So, just got an email from a gentleman named Dan in Santa Barbara, and he says he thinks the correct term for us denizens, us citizens out here, is a free-range cow, because we are not really bound by fences. We are voluntarily bind ourselves into these little things called cities, these little pens, if you will, called cities and counties, and yet there's a whole world out there, literally half. I don't know how big America is, not half the world, but it's a huge, huge, huge plot of land that is virtually unoccupied. We pen ourselves, really, into these cities. And, of course, we suffer the consequences and accept all of the actions against us, all the citations on everything else. So, free range. I believe Stephen Molyneux up there in Canada has a good little thing on that, the story of your enslavement. Good little video on YouTube if anybody wants to check that out. Ah, yes, good times. Hey, Burt.
Yes, sir.
Now, just to be clear here, Gary is actually I don't know what the correct word for that is, but he is a client of yours, correct?
Yes,
Is it okay to say?
And we've become, good friends now.
Is it okay to say the word client?
Well, I assist them. I help them.
Yeah. Your website is onlyfreemen.com, and for anyone out there that is going through these kind of troubles, Burt, as you can see, is very, very willing and eager to help if he has the time. I do have an announcement also. Another very, very integral part of this whole scheme is going to be joining us on Friday. That's Mr. Mark Stevens.
Oh, all right.
If you're not familiar with Adventures in Legal Land, that was his wonderful book, which is also available on YouTube. Someone actually, if you just type in Adventures in Legal Land, someone actually read it. It takes about 5.5 hours to listen to, which is kind of nice for those who like to listen to books instead of read them. But Friday, And then Thursday, of course, Bert will be back for our usual romp around legal land. Bert, is there anything else you wanted to cover? There's so many words on this list that I sent you that I'm almost hesitant to go through anymore.
Yeah, I mean the very concept alone of that term that you brought up of denizen is something that is very, very deep for people to really comprehend. I mean, the people that have already been on this path for a while, of course, they can digest that in a second. But the average man or woman walking the street, they have no clue that they're in fact a denizen. I mean, when you ask them what are they, and they say, "Oh, I'm a citizen of the United States." So, well, what does that mean? And they don't know. I mean, that question we even asked in a federal case of FBI agents. We asked them, "Well, what's a United States citizen?" That's what you guys put on your forms when someone registers, or you ask them or summons them to come to court to be on the jury. They have to check off that they're a United States citizen. Well, what does that mean, sir? And they couldn't even answer that, the FBI people. Or
like
they didn't
said,
want to.
Well, no, that literally no one asks. No, I mean, it's just a given. It's a presumption. These guys aren't trained in that. They're trained bureaucrats. Mm-hmm. So no, they're not going to be able to answer your question because no one ever asked those questions. There's no need to know the answer. Which I'd like more people to do so. It's important to also note that one of the things I'm studying, and I'm not an expert at this by any means, is what a mortgage is. I'm going to get someone on here to explain this, but a mortgage is literally a dead pledge, which is very hard to explain. There's more to them. Vadium, a mortgage, or a dead pledge. When you look up what the dead pledge means, a mortgage, or pawning of things, a thing pawned. When you go up to mortgage, literally, it's defined as a dead pledge, the grant of an estate in fee as security for the payment of money. And of course, when you go look up the word fee, it's the same as fief or feud, as in the feudal system, a fief or a fee. So this word fee is an estate in trust, a loan of land, an estate in trust granted by prince or lord or held by the grantee on the condition of personal service. Basically, we're always saying that the government holds the actual land and you are granted tenancy or usufruct. An absolute fee or fee simple is the land which a man holds to himself and his heirs forever, or called the tenant in fee simple. We don't really have a fee simple anymore. It used to be the allodial system. So the point here is that government considers you dead. What does that mean? You see, government doesn't deal in the flesh. It only deals in artificial things. So you must be dead in the eyes of a court. Well, when we look up death, we find that there's many forms of death, specifically civil death, because we're talking about civil rights, right? That's what the court deals with, are the civil rights. Civil death in law is that which cuts off a man from civil society or its rights and benefits. Excommunication is an example. And it's distinguished, in other words, it's opposite from a natural death. So you have natural death and you have civil death. Well, this tells you very clearly, if you think about it, that you have a quote-unquote straw man. You have a dead man that you use in pledge for mortgages, for real estate.
Yeah, which then brings up the thing about the death certificate. You're not really dead legally until somebody issues a death certificate, right?
Right. I mean, there's people that are alive that were thought to be dead, and they can't reverse their civil death. So the state doesn't even recognize them anymore because the state doesn't recognize living men. To go to court and we could probably learn a lot from some of these cases. I had one come across my desk not that long ago about a guy who left the country because he was getting so abused by the divorce and family courts. And when he came back, he'd already been declared dead. He could not reestablish anything of his straw man. Therefore, he was a living man, literally free in society because he was civilly dead. Now, it's interesting when we say civil rights and we look up the word civil, well, guess what? Civil, the definition says not natural, but in law, as a man civilly dead. You see? Mm-hmm. The word death, when we look at the definition of death, a civil death, beautiful explanation here. A civil death is the separation of a man from civil society or from the enjoyment of civil rights. Again, banishment, abjuration, entering into a monastery. And I find this to be very important too, Bert. We were talking about the corporation soul and how that's based in church, or a church, the concept of a society, a religious society, not a building or anything. But if you enter into a monastery, you are giving up your civil life, basically, and accepting a civil death. So putting things in a corporation soul, which is what I think eventually is going to be the answer to a lot of this stuff, I just haven't proved it yet. By entering into a religious society like that, you're actually declaring civil death, and therefore you're no longer bound by statutory laws or rules. I mean, this is amazing when you start putting together these words. Just incredible. We'll be back, folks. Stay with us.
You want some more?
That I like to, pull up financial reports and just take a look, just for fun. Once you learn to read these things, you can go to a certain page. So today I pulled up the Social Security CAFR. You just type in Social Security Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. And so I pulled it up. It's for 2012 fiscal year. And just as I suspected, they had a $58 billion addition to the Social Security fund, the investment fund. And, of course, those are invested into federal securities. Every year, last year it was $66 billion. This year it was about $58 billion that they acquired after all of the... all the benefits were paid and all that. So when you hear that Social Security is in trouble, they actually, in one of my videos, I think it was the pension fund hoax one, at the end I showed you the projections for Social Security, and they're projecting that I think it was 10 years or so, it'll be up to 4.8 billion, or no, excuse me, 4.8 trillion dollars. So the Social Security fund, the investment fund for Social Security Trust is let's see, where was it? As of 2012, it stands at $2,664,990,000. So that's what's in Social Security. And they're going to tell you that it's broke. In fact, the fund that they show you, the fund balance with the Treasury, is actually only $5,414,000,000. But the actual investment funds, just like every government, the hidden investments, the actual investment fund is $2.6 trillion, expected to go up over $4 trillion in the next decade. Just thought you guys would like to know that, because everything everything's designed to scare you and make you think that you're a bad person for being a baby boomer and all that stuff. It's all a lie. It's all just a bunch of crap. Anyway, Bert, I'm going to go ahead and take, I unfortunately, Bill looks like he dropped again. Darn it. Bill, I'm sorry. Sometimes I rant. Let's take Sovereign Man from Freedom Land. I love it. Oh, he just dropped too. My goodness. Well, that leaves Fred in Michigan, it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Well, Fred, thanks for not dropping.
Jeez. Must be the voodoo gremlins in the cloud tonight.
It might be because I have insomnia and can't sleep, and so I'm really tired.
Oh man! Well, you touched on a lot of nerves here. One of a little tongue-in-cheek humor here. Why don't we form the monastery of the Black Freeman Regiment? Remember the Black Regiment? So, since you reviewed what you did, it's similar to what the Indians enjoy, being extricated from the statutory system. But Ralph in Alaska a few weeks ago made the proclamation that the Alaska State Legislature and all other state legislatures have now declared that the Uniform Commercial Code is the official law of the land. And in a previous decade of the 90s, I was pulled over several times, and on my expired driving license, I had a little label, without prejudice, UCC. Back then it was 1207, and then it became 1308. So I explained, in essence, when asked what that meant, I said, well, what this means is that I'm exercising this lawfully valid remedy provided in the Uniform Commercial Code, Article 1, Section, whereby I reserve my common law right not to be found nor compelled to perform under any contract, commercial agreement, or bankruptcy that I did not enter into knowingly, voluntarily, intentionally. Furthermore, this reservation notifies all administrative agencies of government that I do not and will not accept the liability associated with the compelled benefit of any unrevealed contract, commercial agreement, or bankruptcy. Earlier,
let me ask you a question before you go on. Did you actually submit that somewhere so that it's actually on the record?
In the exchange with the cops in each case, when they heard that, they then asked me, well, are you a lawyer? And I said, well, I'm a law student. And they handed me back the expired license and said, drive carefully and have a good day.
Huh.
And when you brought up the flag, the gold fringe flag, Admiralty Maritime, that actually represents an international contract. And when I investigated that, the University of Michigan Law School librarian told me the international contract that it represents is the bankruptcy of 1933, and I was even given an executive order 6102. And when I looked it up with Dr. Google, along with 6102 came several other executive orders pertaining to the officially declared, although artificially manufactured, bankruptcy of 1933. It was April 5. So if I ever have to go in and they ask me how do I plead? Do I need a defender? To do what? I'm either a creditor or a debtor. There's only two valid parties, and that's relative to a presumed valid contract. So please do present the evidence of your presumed valid contract to which I am an informed consent party. And
here's my opinion on that, and I don't know. We'll ask Burt what he thinks here. We're actually about out of time. I apologize, but I think that when you create a document like this with the intention of showing it to somebody, it seems to me that the step that we're not doing is actually submitting that on the record for either put it in as a public notice in a newspaper, which is one of the oldest forms of public notice, or somehow putting it on the record. And at that point, when you show it to a cop, it's not just handing him a piece of paper, it's handing him evidence of law. It's handing him evidence of the record of the law. And I think that's the trick that I think we haven't done for ourselves, is to actually put it on the record, because then you can say, if you violate this piece of paper, if you try to take away my rights that have been submitted and admitted on the record, proclaimed, then you're knowingly breaking the law. You're knowingly committing crime, as opposed to just saying, I don't accept your paper. The guy would actually have to say, I don't accept the record, which is completely different than just a piece of paper. What do you think, Burt?
Yeah, that's what I try to tell people, that we need to access the public record, which is usually the same place where you would record like deeds and things along those nature. But they're trying to take that office away from us as well. And that this is going on in California. They're perfecting this. They're going county to county. Some counties you can record anything you want. In other counties, they say, "Oh no, we need permission from the attorney." Blah 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 blah.
Right. Well,
that could be in the form of an affidavit of non-corporate status and declaration of natural rights.
Right, and the point is, just like I said, just to get it on the public record, on the court of record, more importantly. All right, guys, thank you very much. I think tomorrow I'm going to spend the show reading off all the laws for chemtrails, in case anyone's interested, all the United Nations laws and everything else. Thanks for joining us, folks, and for the calls. Thanks, Burt.
All right.